So welcome to volume profit analysis. We're going to look at profit as a function of units sold, take a closer look at what that means, and do an example. Now, when you look at profit as a function of units sold, this is a typical view. You'll have profit on the y-axis, units sold on the x-axis. And then you can see you'll normally begin with a negative number here. In other words, if you sell no units, you'll have a certain loss, and those losses are equivalent to the fixed costs involved. In other words, those costs that don't depend on the number of units sold. So if you have 0, your profit is equal to the negative of the fixed costs. Then you'll also have some sort of target profit that you'll be going for, and that would then give you this point here, which gives you an idea of what's your target number of units sold. Also here, you have your break-even point. So if you look at 1 unit being sold, you increase the unit by 1 on the x-axis, and then you're going to increase your profitability or your profit by a certain amount on the y-axis. So for every unit sold, the profit's increased by how much? Well, you can calculate it by saying it's the marginal revenue minus the marginal cost equals the marginal profit. That's the contribution margin per unit. Now, of course, the marginal revenue is the price of a unit. The marginal cost is the variable cost of the unit. And the difference, price minus variable cost, will be the contribution margin per unit. And when we talk about the variable cost of the unit, that includes all variable costs, not just manufacturing costs. So if you have marginal selling costs, that would be also included in here. So let's take an example with numbers. If your business sells widgets, let's say each one is priced at $10 each. And let's also assume that the fixed cost of manufacturing them is $2,000 and the variable cost is $6 per unit. So let's look at 3 questions. First of which would be, what's your break even? How many number of units do you need to sell to break even? What is the number of units you need to sell to have an operating profit of 1,000? And finally, what is the number of units you would need to sell to have an after-tax operating profit of 1,000 if your tax rate is 20%? So first of all, we calculate the increase in operating profit per unit. In other words, the contribution margin per unit. That's simply the price minus the variable cost. 10 minus $6 is $4 per unit. So if we sell 1 unit, the increase in profit is $4 a unit. Now, as you can see, we again start with the fixed cost as a loss, the fixed cost being $2,000. And what we need to do is hit the break-even point here at 0. And you'll see here on the x-axis, you need to sell n units. That's the break-even number of units. And on the y-axis, you have to recover the $2,000 of fixed costs. So to break even, 4, because each unit gives you 4. 4 times the number of units will equal the fixed costs. So as an equation, that'll be contribution margin per unit times n units equals the fixed costs. In this case, with the numbers we have, 4 times n equals 2,000, which is the amount we need to recover, so n is 500. Again, that makes sense. 500 units times $4 a unit means we're going to earn $2,000 of total contribution margin, and that covers our fixed costs. Now, what would be the number of widgets we would need to sell to have an operating profit of $1,000? So here's our target, $1,000. That means here we would have to recover this amount. The total amount would have to then be the fixed cost plus the target profit. Here we are looking at $2,000 to get to 0 plus another $1,000 to get to 1,000. So the total amount we would have to recover is, or have to earn with contribution margin, is $3,000. So now we have, again, 4 times n units is $3,000. As an equation, that would mean the contribution margin per unit times n is going to equal the fixed cost plus target profit, because the fixed cost brings us to 0 and the target profit gets us up to where we're looking, or to our target. So for n equals 3,000 or n equals 750 in this example. Again, let's take a look at the numbers. 750 times $4 a unit would give us $3,000, and we'd have the fixed cost of 2,000 to recover. That leaves us with 1,000, our target profit. Now finally, what's the number of widgets you would need to sell to have an after-tax operating profit of 1,000 given a tax rate of 20%? So we need to calculate the before tax operating profit first. So we solve the question then just like B as before. So we'd have the target profit here. We have our $2,000 fixed cost. So we'd have to recoup $2,000 plus our pre-tax or before tax target profit. And that would help us to calculate the units sold. So this before tax profit, of course, corresponds to an after-tax profit of 1,000. So looking at you would have your costs, and then eventually you'd have your pre-tax operating profit. Then you would subtract the tax, which is 20% of the operating profit. That's what we're given. And that equals your after-tax profit. Now this number would be 1,000. So let's call it pre-tax operating profit OP. Then we have the equation OP minus 20% of OP is 1,000. Making it more literal, 100% of OP, because one OP is 100% of OP minus 20% of OP is 1,000, or 80% of OP is 1,000. OP being pre-tax operating profit. So that would be 1,000 over 0.8. So we divide it by 80% or 0.8, and we have an pre-tax operating profit of 1,250. So as an equation, that means our pre-tax operating profit, we can calculate as saying our after-tax operating profit divided by 1 minus tax rate. Why? Because the pre-tax operating profit times 1 minus tax rate equals after tax. Anyway, so here's the equation to calculate pre-tax operating profit. Now that we have the value of 1,250, we plug it into the target operating profit calculation from part B. So what is the number of units you need to sell? We'd have 4 times n units. Again, that's contribution margin per unit times number of units equals fixed cost plus pre-tax operating profit, target operating profit. That means 4n is 3,250, or n equals 812.5, or we'd have to meet in full widgets, 813 widgets. That's it. Thank you for your attention, and I hope that helped you.